Lancer, a fantastic setting that I could easily say is one of my favorite sci-fi settings like ever. Its tech is fantastic. It hovers on this really fun line of everything being pretty detailed, and if you have a question about the setting, there's probably an answer, but it's also not like so detailed. It's like, Star Wars or 40K level of detailed. This doesn't leave everything so ambiguous that you're left trying to figure out what's going on, but you have enough wiggle room that you can kind of create your own stuff for the setting, which makes it really freeing in a way. But the important aspect of Lancer is the mechs, the part of the game that you actually play, and each mech has a lot of flavor text to them that I really want to share. That's what I'm gonna do today. I'm gonna share one fun fact about each mech that I found while just reading through CompCon for fun, which I do as a pastime, which you should also do. In two parts, because there are a lot of mechs and, oh boy, time-wise, I can't manage it. Which, hey, if you, like this part and want to see the next one, then why not subscribe? That'll actually make sure you're notified for the next part. That's something. And thank you to my channel members for making these videos possible. And a very special thank you to Christian Voorhees for subscribing at the highest level. This level of support truly helps my channel, so it's greatly appreciated. The Blackbeard is designed with one core concept in mind. Sometimes when you're fighting in space, shooting a gun, pretty dangerous. There's a lot of stuff that could accidentally explode in 0G, so it's built for melee and grappling. How does it do this? It has some very special weapons to do so. Mainly a Warhammer 40k style chain axe, which doubles as like a utility tool to carve through like bulkheads and doors. But the cool important one is that nanocarbon sword, which will adjust its molecular composition in real time as it feeds the data as you're making your connections with your enemy targets. As you're doing so, the sword itself is adjusting its composition to better kill the person you're fighting. The Blackbeard's variant frame, the Empikai, is a mech that really does match its lore of being designed from the hallucinations of a poet and mech designer. From its appearance, I doubt that's really surprising to learn, and I also doubt it's very surprising to learn that that giant hand makes up 50% of its mass, which also, by the way, has its own little CompCon AI to control it, which is pretty goofy. I guess you could say that's multiple fun facts, but whatever. You see that minigun on the Drake? Despite just looking cool, that gun is also so powerful, Northstar really recommends you only fire it within very specific specifications. In their very particular burst fire recommendations, otherwise, you could damage the mech, or, in more dangerous circumstances, yourself, with how much raw firepower that minigun can output. The Lancaster is the most versatile support mech in the game, and one of the methods it can do this is with the restock drone. This drone will go out and go clear some heat, a condition, it'll load a weapon for other players, things like that. It's really useful. Gained itself a fun little nickname, as when it goes out and does this, and is used up, it'll just disintegrate upon its completion of its job, which among Lancers has earned it the nickname of Mech Snack. The Nelson are the main staple mechs for the anti-piracy group Albatross, a group of cosmopolitans who are largely funded by ISPN Northstar. Due to their vast amount of time spent in space, the Nelson is designed to be highly modular and legacy compatible, so any old or new tech modifications Albatross comes across are more easily added to its frame. The Rayleigh's core system, the M35 Mjolnir cannon, works off of neural impulses, either from a pilot, CompCon, or an NHP on board. Once it starts spinning up, this thing will keep spinning and firing off at targets automatically until the Rayleigh is completely destroyed, giving it the nickname of a dead gun. Please pardon my German. Stortbaker
Störtebeker
is based on the story of a real guy, maybe, probably, at least a legend. The dude was a German pirate who made boatload of cash, literally, but was eventually caught and arrested. When he tried to bribe his way out of it, which was purportedly enough gold to completely surround the city of Hamburg, he was denied. When that deal was denied, he tried to make another deal, that the Senate would pardon as many of his crew as he could get up and walk past after his head was cut off, which they agreed. He got his head cut off, he stood up and walked past 11 of his crewmates, which then the executioner stuck his foot out and just tripped him. This is reflecting the lore of the mech, that Despite the mech like making some pretty good success and the company that designed it honestly was in a pretty good state, they were really fucked over a whole lot, and then the mech company itself, Anton Industries, got completely cannibalized by ISBN North Star. I'll be completely honest, there isn't a lot about the Tortuga, but do you like Armored Core? Well, good news. Catalytic Hammer is just the pile bunker. Happy to let you know that. Now, the Vlad's inspiration is pretty obvious, but there's actually a really hidden one here. In the flavor text, they mention, now, you liked my German before, pardon my Korean, Yi Sun-shin, a Korean admiral who's considered to be one of the best naval commanders in history. Like, go read up on this dude. He's an actual legend. It's fucking awesome. So, when it comes to the Vlad, we gotta look at the part where, you know, it's very clear they got the inspiration from the turtle ship, which was built in the 15th century. As you can see, this is a ship, but it's covered in spikes. That way, people couldn't board it on account of, you know, they'd get stabbed. Also, like, in a really fascinating bit, at least I think this is really interesting, just discovering this. This is actually a really early form of, like, the ironclads. This was built in, like, the 15th century, like, the end of the 1500s. And for those who don't know, the ironclads, which was a really major advancement in, like, naval technology, were built in the 1800s, like, the later end of that. This is a massive advancement. Holy shit, this is very cool. And, like, the turtle ship led to a bunch of key victories against the Japanese Navy. Like, this isn't something to sneeze at. Like I said, go look into this guy. The history is very cool, and go learn about it from someone who's more actually knowledgeable about Korean history than I am. Now, the easy fact about the Caliban is that despite its size, it can inflict crazy high knockback against even the largest mechs. But here's a goofy one. So, it's a cool shotgun, the HHS-155 Cannibal. Is so high-powered, even ejecting its shells is dangerous. Unarmored friendlies are noted to steer clear of it because it ejects these shells with such force. Unarmored friendlies are prone to get decapitated by the sheer force of these shells. Now, the Zhang is actually a Rayleigh that has been completely retrofitted to instead be a pure melee mech. Now, this is a fact that would normally depress me, because I am a huge Rayleigh simp. Like, that's my favorite mech of all time. How could you do that to my baby boy? But, however, the actual story of the Zhang is absolutely so badass that I'm okay with it, to be completely honest. And to be fair, the story of Zhang Jiali is a pretty sick one. Basically, the entire mech is shaped around her story, and it's actually sick. Just go read it on CompCon. Much like its namesake, there are rumors that deep in the code base of the Kid frame, there are clues leading to asteroids that have long hidden treasure caches hidden by the mech's paranoid creator. This is a rumor that North Star has done their absolute damnedest to squash, but it really hasn't stopped Lancers from poking around in their files anyways. I'm going to combine the Black Witch and the Orcus here, since the major fact about both of them is their really big major ties to the Karakin Trade Baronies faction, which both frames are like their main bulk of the fighting force. The real difference is just who gains both of them, as the Black Witch is given to more like nobles, personal guards, officers, and the higher-ups kind of deal, while the Orcus, its variant frame, is given to like the main bulk of the fighting force, though still having its own like noble culture, as it's also passed down, and as you can see in like the art of it, it also has very noble regalia and like heraldry all over it. The Death's Head is all about battlefield analysis, so precognition is its game. Highly experimental precognition, as in the designers don't even fully get how it works. But it does allow pilots to get info and act on it before they're even fully aware of it. Like through these little special tracer rounds that actually hold like tiny little drones that after shooting their target, they upload live firing data of the target. So then, you know, you can get better battlefield data of the guy you're trying to kill, which is, I don't know, just kind of fun. The Duskwing is honestly one of the best frames to read through casually, mainly because it's my favorite genre of CompCon mech, which is the one where all of its license levels are just telling you a story. It's telling you the story of a person going through the absolute horrifying experience of a Metavolt expedition. What is a Metavolt? Well, it's a spot in real space that has direct physical access to blink space. which is bad. Pretty bad. And it has a cascading NHP in it, so reality doesn't make sense, and this is bad. There's been 3 known metavolts that have been explored and found, and this specific one was pretty rough. I guess other fun fact, this metavolt that they got the Dusk Wings information from, they also were used to make the Morning Cloak, which I'll talk about later. Now, despite being an incredibly basic, just military combat mech, the Metal Mark apparently has an incredibly comfy chair. Like, literally, there wasn't anything else I found interesting about the Metal Mark, but it's mentioned that it's comfy and the chair is gimbal mounted. I don't know how many of you have worked with gimbal mounted, like, tripods and camera mounts. I have. I thought that was really funny. It's the only Lancer mech that I know that is specifically said to be comfortable. Therefore, you've heard it here first, folks. The Metal Mark is the comfiest mech. Now, the Monarch is personally one of my least favorite mechs. I'm not a big fan of it. I'm not a big fan of big missile mechs. Not my vibe. So it does hurt me to say this, but according to Smith Shimano, the Monarch is just so objectively good at its job of killing people that they have to artificially pull back its production so it doesn't just become the most dominant mech on the battlefield. This, by the way, is coming at you in a universe that is post-scarcity, at least in the core world, so they do this purely artificially. If they wanted to, they can make as many Monarchs as they wanted. So there. This is directed at one person in particular. You know who you are. You win. I guess the Monarch, from a lore standpoint, I have to admit, is the best mech in the game. And as well, on a completely unrelated note to my audience, you should go support Eldritch Osiris Games, especially their Project Mech Finder. The shit rules, and also their team behind it is absolutely fantastic, and I love them to pieces. Conversely, the Viceroy is kind of like the opposite. It's a scaled down version of the Monarch that's more aimed to be rolled out on the same scale as like the Harrison Armory's Sherman, which is a very standard template soldier mech. The Morning Cloak really is just a medical experiment mech when you get down to it. Almost every license level has some form mention that Smith Shimano is still figuring out what effect this piece of technology has on the human body. Please check in with your doctor every once in a while. Like, it's everything. It's also made with that same metavolt data as I told you about earlier before. Also, the Firmament, which, by the way, what is the Firmament? Well, it's kind of the blank space, but maybe different. It's theorized to be the blank space, but specifically a group known as the On, which is like another group faction of humans. They have a deeper, more spiritual tie to it and can specifically use it to some greater extents, which with how the Morning Cloak can utilize it, it can almost like be physically wrapped in paracausality that lets it go invisible, which does mean as a pilot you are physically being touched by raw paracausality, so yeah, you really should go do your checkups. It's pretty important. The NHP for the Swallowtail is considered to be one of the best tactical support NHPs out there, mainly due to how much information it's just able to get with its absolute unlimited knowledge to the OmniNet, something that I feel like in any other setting would be scary information to learn, but apparently here it's a-okay and cool. It also can get signals from nearby Lancers, system relays, and its own hacking of enemy systems, which lets it create a perfect 3D environment of the battlefield to predict its own events. I gotta say, damn, this was me doing my absolute best to make a fact that wasn't just the exact same shit as the Death's Head, because it's just another precognition sniper. Speaking of, the Swallowtail Ranger is much crazier, though it's just really unable to be printed, really. This is a mech that's designed to be like a reward for a very specific campaign book, because these Ranger variants were made in like guerrilla combat, so they are custom made for the environment that they're in, and are, you know, in situations where resources aren't really available and people don't have printers. The White Witch is another frame like the Duskwing I adore because the entire license is just a story. It's the greatest, go read it. This time, it is the story of the mech designers coming up with the concept for the thing, and I gotta say, the concept is a little terrifying. The White Witch is able to take in material, be it organic or inorganic, turn it into weapons or armor, which, by the way, the story touches on the idea of, yeah, that is scary. Also, yeah, what does happen if a human gets touched by that? And then it also touches on the concept of, you know, selling that to the corporation and trying to market it. It's a cool little story. Now, I could not track this down like an actual source for this, so please correct me if I'm wrong here. Someone who is actually like around at this point. But the Emperor's whole thing is like divine rule and very like religious. So its lore leans really heavily into spirituality. So intermixed in its flavor text are these fake Bible verses from like a fake holy book. Now, from what I could find, I saw mentions that originally in the playtest, it actually used mentions and excerpts from the Quran, which I thought is interesting. I can understand why they wouldn't have that in like its official release now, but I could not track down a playtest of it because it seems like the playtest is completely deleted and no one was posting a copy, so sorry if that one's not true. Now, the Atlas mech is a power suit that comes with a literal martial art tied to it. Now, this is a martial art that you really should learn if you pilot an Atlas, because if you don't, you will injure yourself, because the suit itself is printed with the fighting style like baked into it, because it is both a method to fight big ass kaiju and is a method for like the most common pilots for the Atlas are the Spari people, and it is a method they use to keep more in tune with like their ancestors who come before them who were also Atlas pilots, which the Jaeger word that I'm going to avoid saying, because if I mispronounce that, I'm worried YouTube will kill my video. Yeah. Okay, the Jaeger. Specifically, it's baked into a martial art, and the Atlas will actually make its own movements, which, you know, if you don't know the movements and you're trying to fight something and then it just bends your arm the other direction, that sounds like a recipe for some broken limbs and maybe, you know, you dying or something. Now, it actually does have a Mark II, which is even more advanced, even stronger, pretty scary stuff, mainly because Smith Shimano won't even give you the license for this unless you can prove that you have mastered this martial arts, because if you are not a master, you will most likely just kill yourself in the process of piloting an Atlas. But yeah, that's it. You know, part 2 is going to be Horus and Harrison Armory. That should come next video upload, which should be, you know, Monday. So if you like this, like, comment, subscribe, join my membership, and see ya.